Hello, and welcome back to Homeschool Journey 101. One of the questions that I get asked over and over again is, how can you homeschool multiple age groups at once? Is it really possible to homeschool a large number of children and they'll still be well educated? People seem very concerned about this. I feel like for 25 years, people have been asking me this question at least once a week. And in fact, I think when my children were younger, maybe I got it asked more. But certainly once I started leading homeschool groups, I would find that I would be asked this question multiple times a week. And so we really wanted to have this be one of the first questions that we answered. And so I know now you're thinking, okay, well, prove it. And so again, in the spirit of just trying to prove it, I'm going to go through where my 9 children are now after having been homeschooled in a large group. So I have a daughter who is a Latin teacher. I have a son who is a manager of over 40 people at a pharmaceutical company. I have a son who is at Columbia Law School and was recently hired by a top 10 law firm. I have a son who is a chief of staff at Gordon College and an associate vice president. And none of my children homeschooled individually, they're all homeschooling together. When we go into my 5 younger adopted children, I have a daughter who first got an associate's degree, but is now training as a plumber. I have a daughter who is training as a teacher. I'm in college too, so I'm a teacher. I have a son who is pre-med at Gordon College, and I have a son who is a graphic design major at Gordon College. In fact, 3 of those last kids are at Gordon College. So the thing is, absolutely yes, Renee has a son who is currently at Cornell Law School. He was the youngest student his year to be admitted. She has a daughter about to launch into law school, and she's still homeschooling her 5 other children. So just between the 2 of us, I think that you would have to say, yes, absolutely it worked. And there's probably 1,000, maybe 10,000 people who could be making this video and have even better outcomes. But certainly we know ourselves, dozens and dozens of people who have homeschooled large groups of children and had these same fantastic outcomes. So hopefully we have proven that yes, it's possible. Now we're going to go into some nuts and bolts of how that looks. Like how can you make that happen? There's a couple key pieces that I'm just really going to quickly go over. I encourage you to watch our longer videos so that you can understand, a little more how this backs up. But you're going to figure out how you can divide your children into groups. You're not going to teach 9 different children, 9 different subjects, 9 different times. I actually don't think that would be possible. But it is very possible to divide your children into groups for certain topics. So for example, if you were teaching math, it could be that your 2 older kids would be in one group, then your 2 younger children, your next 2 children in the next group, then you might have 4 children in the next group. But you would do it not by numbers, but by how quickly they're moving along and what ages work together. It could be that certain topics like history, you could very well divide into groups of 2 or 3. So a lot of times in my family, the groups were the oldest 4, the next children, and then the last 2 children. Another question people have is this really going to work for children of a variety of different skills or background levels? And yes, my 4 oldest children are biological, but my 5 younger children are adopted, and I didn't adopt them until about age 4, one of them much older. And yes, absolutely, kids can move along together in these smaller groups. So once you've found your groups, don't feel like it's that group for every subject, right? It could be that you have a child who really is ready to move along a lot faster in one topic than the other. The groups don't have to be set in stone, right? It could be that there's sometimes when all the middle children will be on the same page for a history, and your older kids, just your oldest 2 kids in a different one, and your youngest 2 at the other. So it's however the groups work. Part of thinking about groups is thinking about the fact that you might have a toddler or a baby, and thinking about how they are also going to work in, how are they going to have their own time too. Some people do have babies that apparently sit in their parents' lap, cooing happily through everything. And, if you do, wonderful. But for a lot of us, instead, it's going to be scheduling in quality time for those children too. So that kind of leads into our next thing of scheduling. There's a lot of ways to schedule, and it's really tempting, I think, when people start out homeschooling to not schedule. And if you only have a few children, that might work, but the more children you have, to make sure everybody gets their time, it's really important to have a schedule. And your schedule could be kind of a flow through the day schedule, or it could be a schedule that's really time specific. But the idea is you're thinking ahead for a month, for a week, even for a day. Like, how does this day work so that everybody gets what they need? And what you'll do is you'll have to think through these three basic components of your schedule. You have to think through one-on-one instruction. It's how much time will you spend on each topic where you're actually helping your child figure out, how does this work together? How is this all going to happen? Reviewing or introducing new topics, but you have to figure through how that's going to happen so that no matter what, you're actually instructing your child. Some people homeschool in a different way, but I feel like the joy of homeschooling, the beauty of homeschooling, is this time engaged one-on-one in teaching these lessons or working together through a lesson. So you have to figure out how that's going to work. And there's a lot of different pieces. It could be that you start earlier with your middle group because they're early risers, and the other two groups of kids sleep later, and they get worked into the schedule that way. It could be that you find a variety of different schedules that will work simultaneously. You might have some children on a 30-30 schedule where 30 minutes of work, 30 minutes off, and some other children on a larger schedule. But even though it seems like some effort, putting in the time for some good scheduling is really what can make your day smoothly flow happily. Everyone has joy, and at the end of the day, you're thinking like, okay, we mostly got done what we needed to do. Now, a piece of that is thinking through what is going to be happening when your children are neither working independently nor engaged in that one-on-one learning time. And to make this flow correctly through the day, in my mind, it's good to have some variety. So centers or projects that are ongoing, whether you have a table with books set out and a science project that they can redo during the day, or you have a whole shelf full of boxes of independent things like write a letter, painting, that they can pull that out and take it to their desk. This really makes homeschooling joyful, that it's not just I'm listening to my lessons and I'm doing my independent work. There's, in any given day, there's a variety of these different things are happening. But this also makes it happen just naturally, that kids have things that they're doing independently without you that are still valuable educationally. They're still helping them develop all those skills that you want to be creative, independent thinkers. So having centers, having time where they're doing their independent work, all of that will work even better if each child has their own schedule, whether it's a list of what they're going to do that day, like you're going to do this center and this center and this independent work. But that the more children you have, the more important it is that they have some kind of little list that tells them, this is what I should be doing. Oh, okay, so actually she's not done with that group doing this yet, but I see that I still need to do my 1 page of spelling for the day, or I still didn't finish this. They always know what's happening next. And interestingly, a lot of my children continue to write themselves these lists as adults. So I think it's a great way to really young get this idea of, how can I schedule my day effectively? The last thing is I think a lot of people imagine homeschooling is going to be a situation where it's just the parent by themselves in a room all the time. But the reality is that virtually everybody that's homeschooling is homeschooling with the help of a homeschooling group or outside help. And the more children you have, it could be that you find you want to do this even more than other people. So if you find yourself thinking, it's really hard to do all those science experiments, then probably you should find a homeschool group that's really strong in science so that you know that that's going to happen for your child every week. So even if you love the idea of doing art one day, every day, if you know you're not going to teach science because you're just not going to get to it, you might want to think about a homeschool group that can meet those needs for you. If it turns out that you find it really difficult to teach math after, 6th grade, 7th grade, algebra 2, wherever it is, the more children you have, the more likely it's going to be that you look for a math teacher, or even better, if you have a homeschool program where that can all happen one-on-one, then it can be really easy because you're sticking your child to one place at one time. But the big thing is that you are thinking through what you will teach, what will be easy for you to get done, and what you are going to get outside help from, whether it's through a relative, whether it's through a tutor, or through a homeschool group. And then you'll find that it's absolutely possible to do this homeschooling and with a large group and many different children. And in fact, I just think that you're going to find it's a joyful, wonderful experience. Now, let's hear from Renee, who has 7 children and has also done this for a long time, 16 years.
Helen, this is fantastic information. As Helen said, I have 7 children. My oldest is 21. My youngest 2 are 10. There's a wide age gap there. So we had points in our homeschool life where we had high school students and we had young elementary students. And it is completely possible to homeschool each child and meet their needs, meet their academic needs, meet their social needs, their emotional needs. And to recap some of these tips that Helen's outlined here, making a schedule, breaking your children into groups, setting up centers so time isn't wasted. They all have something to be working on when you're working with the other group. Asking for outside help, finding other resources, people who can invest in your children, and finding a homeschool group that your children are going to love going to, where there are people there who are qualified to teach your children in certain subjects like math or science or art or music, all of those wonderful things that your children can find at that homeschool group. Homeschooling multiple ages does not mean that anyone gets left out. Everyone, a little bit of forethought put into your scheduling, into planning your extracurriculars to make sure that no one is getting bored or frustrated. That little bit of thought at the beginning of your homeschooling week, of your homeschooling school year, will make the difference. You can absolutely do this.
Yay, Renee, absolutely. You really can. And I'm glad Renee touched on something that I really should have said also. And that's it. Sometimes pieces of your homeschooling are done as extracurricular activities when your day is over. They're not necessarily a homeschool group, but things that you still want to have happen, whether it's exercising, teamwork, art, music. So many pieces can happen as extracurriculars too. Thank you for listening. I hope this helped. And yes, you can definitely homeschool multiple age groups. I hope to see you soon on some of our other videos. If you liked our video, please give us a thumbs up. Thank you. Bye-bye.